In the meantime, I want to share one thing that stayed with me uh, from last class, or at least I recall from last class, and that's that we said that Yusuf's dream is much more than being about just Yusuf. And it was a very helpful point for me because we have been emphasizing looking at being open to science and seeing the science place in our life, pointing to transcendent and giving us these profound messages. And the additional emphasis that the science in my life, there may be unique science for me as for in my personal life. Still, though, these signs and my special signs, my unique signs, are also about transcendent and about eternity. It isn't about just me, Isra, and my finite, limited needs at this point. I don't know if I'm able to express it, but so Yusuf's dream is not just about fulfilling something in Yusuf's heart or taking care of Yusuf's need or giving something special to Yusuf. Rather, it's about much more than about Yusuf. There's something playing out in the life of Yusuf that is a sign for others as well. And it's not about particularly about Yusuf per se. It's playing out in Yusuf's life, but the signs are pointing beyond Yusuf to the merciful and beautiful maker of Yusuf. So just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Isra. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again to Always Receiving Nur weekly classes on Yusuf story as it is related to us in the Quran. May we always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance, and may we live with that guidance, inshallah. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وارزقنا علما تنفعنا به. So the question or the issue that Isra talked about, I also found myself reflecting on it again and again, and maybe also because for some reason maybe these past 2 weeks, the ayat that we read these past 2 weeks were for some reason maybe relevant to where I am right now in my life. So maybe I felt the need for them. I felt these ayats very, very strongly, especially the point that Isra indicated that whatever our purpose in life is, each one of us individually, just like physically, are all interconnected. Our existence is interconnected with each other and with the rest of creation. So our purposes in life, our visions and dreams are also interconnected. And to understand that they are interconnected is one thing, but to actually feel that and see that in one's life is a completely different thing. It's so overwhelming, you know, when you are you come out suddenly in the light and you try to look at the sun. It's very bright and you can't look for long, and you close your eyes. I feel like my reflection is like that. I feel very quickly, very short reflections, and then I feel like overwhelmed. You know, when you're looking for listening and looking for the signs and listening to what these signs, to what the events in our life are telling us, I found that very often we do, or I do, forget that it is not only about me, about my little world, my life, that even when I can't see what's going on, it does not mean that there is no purpose in it. And its purpose does not look only to me, it looks to many people, and not only to humanity or to the world, but also, more importantly, to Akhirah, to the hereafter, to the divine names, to everlastingness, which is just too too much, not because we need to understand, but because we need to surrender. And we don't need to understand what's going on to surrender, because we know that we don't understand. We know that we don't know. We know, or when we are aware enough to know that what I know is so limited. So why am I making my understanding and my knowing as a point of reference for what is? And so that's where Ma'rifatullah, knowing God, is very important, because we need to trust Him, to trust in His wisdom, to trust in His compassion. And we have no other choice when we talk about it. So some points that came through these reflections this week is one was about values. I mean, for instance, we have Yusuf alayhi salam in the palace, in prison, and then again he's now going back to the palace, and this time he's going back as a ruler, not as a slave. So to prefer the palace to the prison, to prefer to be free to being enslaved, is we have been given that sense. It's fitra, it's in our fitra. That's how we have been created. However, the place in itself, whether it's the palace or the prison, can't be our point of reference of what is good or bad. What is good or bad for me, for us. And or what gives value to us as people. I mean, when I'm in the prison or when I'm in the palace, does it mean that I have more value than when I'm in something more lowly, in a prison, for instance? And we can take the example of the king here. He's richer than Yusuf alayhi salam. He has more power. He has all the wealth and everything. Does it mean that he is in a better position than Yusuf alayhi salam? I mean, we need to be clear about this, because these kinds of values and assumptions, we repeat them so much, we take them so much for granted, that they are there in the background playing all the time, and they are our beliefs, and we live our lives accordingly. We judge accordingly. We plan our lives accordingly. We choose our prioritize our aims in life accordingly, but we never question those values. So I thought here these ayats are like inviting us to question all this, because it's telling us a completely different story. So we see that here the king is not necessarily in a better position than Yusuf alayhi salam. I mean, not in being, he's being king, he's being wealthy, he's being more powerful, doesn't give him anything that makes him better than Yusuf. And Yusuf is not better because he's poor or a slave or in prison, because we know later he is going to be a ruler and a powerful, wealthy ruler. But Yusuf is still Yusuf. Who he is not the poor slave or the wealthy ruler. That's what we see from outside. That's a temporary status. It is not who he is. And so who do we look forward to learn from? Who do we look forward to emulate? The king or Yusuf? Yusuf alayhi salam in the prison or in the palace. It doesn't matter, because what makes Yusuf that person that the Quran, that Allah is telling us about, is his being a muhsin, not where he is, what his status is. And that, I think, is very, very important. I personally feel the need to repeat it again and again, because I find that we take so many things for granted without questioning them. What is our criteria? Wealth, riches, power. We do have criteria like this, but think about it. They are all fani, they are all transient. They all go at most, if we can guarantee them, and we can't, as far as the grave. I mean, someone who is wealthy today, tomorrow he may be bankrupted. So there is no guarantee. But let's say it's guaranteed. Still, it will go at most as far as the grave. So in themselves and of themselves, they do not have a value or a meaning, so that they are not worth being pursued for themselves and in themselves. They are only means, and it all depends on how we use them and for what purpose. And that doesn't depend on them, it depends on who we are, how we interact with the world, how we perceive the world. Are we muhsins or not? Do we find God's love and compassion and riches and power and might and in everything? Because that's the source. Because we have been given that attachment, that love for the beautiful divine names. So we do love compassion, we do love riches, we do love power, we do love justice, we do love goodness, but all those are with God. And we can only find that source when we learn here, not from the king, but from Yusuf alayhi salam, and live in his name, in his presence, and surrender to his design, to his vision for us. We think it's our vision. It's not. It's a vision that God has for his ibad. So that made me reflect more and more on the fact that the world is constantly changing. I mean, just in case, the nafs has doubts and hesitations and may say, yes, but, the world, we live here, we need to eat, Yeah, it's good to think about akhirah, it's good to worship God, but remember, we live in this world. But then remember that the world changes constantly. So we have Yusuf alayhi salam, who was a destitute slave in prison one day, and the next day he is a wealthy, powerful ruler of the whole area. So what do we do with this reality? What does it tell us? At least we understand that this world cannot be our destination. It cannot be our goal. So let's not get, drowned into events, into things. Especially, we get drowned into things that upset us. Everything here is just part of the journey. We are on a journey, and everything else is on a journey. They're not here to stay forever. What happens also doesn't stay forever. They're all performing something. They're all performing some important functions. They're all bringing some messages, and not in their name, but in the name of their employer, their Rabbul Alameen. And the more we get used to that, we see that, we witness that, that's what Shahada is. The more I witness it, the more I see it, the more I say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, I witness there is no deity, all these things are all happening in the name of God. There is only one goal, one eternal one source of everything that I need. Then, when I witness that, I also become part of that. My life, I start living my life accordingly. So that's a way of remembering. The more I remember this reality, the more I am likely, inshallah, to surrender, to intend to surrender to our Rabb's, to my Rabb's purpose in sending us to this world. Because that purpose will get clearer and clearer. Otherwise, the world becomes a very scary place. And the third thing that we've been actually talking about since we've been reading this beautiful story is that all of us, in some way or another, especially when we are more aware of it, we go through stages like Yusuf stages in life, up and down. And it doesn't have to be like a physical prison. Most of us won't find ourselves, inshallah, in a physical prison. But sometimes we feel like in prison, even when we are not. We don't like what's happening in our life. We're anxious, uncertain. There's so many things happening that may make us feel like like we are in a prison. So we need to stop and reconsider those situations and look at them with glasses of iman and trust. Our friend Alia gave me this example of glasses, and I loved it because it's I almost it was in a Google document that she shared with me, and she had this picture of a frame glasses, and okay, when you put these glasses are the glasses of awareness, of iman, of trust. And why I like them, because sometimes we need an anchor, something that reminds us, something like physical, like the prayers. We have the prayers 5 times a day. It's like something physical that will remind me of whatever I knew and I am likely to forget. So this is a nice metaphor. Each time you put the glasses, you forget that, okay, the glasses of iman, of trust. And when you put those glasses on, do they look the same? All those things we were complaining about, we're anxious about? They don't. We can perceive them that the same, let's say, physical conditions can appear or be felt in different ways based on how we interpret the events, how we think about them, how we think they mean. And a very simple example is I could be sitting and being hungry for, let's say, a day, 10 hours, 12 hours, let's say. And let's say it's in Ramadan, I'm fasting. So I know that there is something coming up in the evening. So it doesn't bother me because I don't feel like I'm going to die of hunger. So I don't feel very hungry. I will feel more hungry if I keep talking about it and thinking about it. But if I am sitting there being hungry for 10 hours, but believing, I think that there is no food around me and I don't know when I will be able to find food, then those 10 hours will be I won't feel them in the same way, because there will be all that fear, the imagination of the future. What if there is no food? What if I die of hunger? All that will play, and I will feel the hunger more and more and more. So physically, it's the same state of being, but what I believe about it makes a lot of change. Generally speaking, it doesn't mean that I will always know that there is food out there, or I'm smelling it or seeing it. However, the believer believes in ghaib. So just because we don't know right now, it does not mean that things are happening haphazardly. So I trust. That's where trust is very important. But of course, before we trust, there is all that process of Tawhid, of knowing God in everyday things that are happening all the time. I don't get to know God suddenly in times of crisis. I don't go to an important exam at the end of the year, or like the university entry exam. It's really like all your high school. You're tested on all the what you learned in high school. You don't go there and you don't learn during the exam. You learn before. And during the exam, whatever you know will come out or won't come out. So it's the same for us. We don't wait for times of crisis to learn something. So Iman is when we can trust even when we don't know. We come to a point when we trust, we know. Even if I don't know what's going on now, I know that everything is fine, everything is being taken care of, even when what I see doesn't seem so. Like Yusuf alayhi salam. Because the fact is that we don't know much anyways. We can't see the big picture anyways because we're so limited. But Rabbul Alameen, our Rabb, my Rabb, knows all and sees all and has power over all. And so there comes that also that with the trust that Rabbul Alameen has the how do you say, the of all in mind, the good of all in whatever is happening. It's not just about me, it's about everyone else. Like the example that Alia gave us last week. So these two guys were there in this filthy prison cell for a week. They thought it in the beginning that it was appalling, and they couldn't see the purpose in it because it just looks so appalling. But by the time they got out, they saw some of the purpose in being there and the beauty of the purpose in being there. And they saw only a small part of it, a sign of it, and we don't know the rest. And that's why in the Quran it says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You may hate something while it is good for you, and you may love a thing while it's bad for you, and God knows and you don't know, and it's only after it's over then that we realize it. And so we stopped at ayah 51, where the king asked the women about Yusuf alayhi salam, and they said, oh, we didn't see anything bad about him. And the wife of the Aziz then, she said, now the truth has come to light. It was I who sought to tempt him, whereas he is indeed truthful. So she only, it seems, Wallahu a'lam, God knows, that she was like almost put on the spot. She says, Al-ana hasal haqu. Now the truth has come to light. So she finally confesses, but all the evidence is now in the open. It's all against her. And Yusuf alayhi salam is not her a slave boy in her house. I mean, a young slave, powerless slave boy in her house. I mean, she can't bully him or harass him as she wills anymore. So now that he has gained the favor of the king, now that the women all witnessed against her, she says, okay, the truth has come out, and so she can't deny it anymore. And why I'm saying this, because now this week we start with Ayah 52, and in Ayah 52 it says, this is so that he might know that I did not betray him in his absence, and that God does not guide the plotting of the betrayers. The plotting of the betrayers is interesting here because it means those who betray the betrayers will have to plot and lie. Plotting and lying and betrayal, they go together. And we saw there are two examples in this surah. Yusuf's brothers and then the wife of the Aziz. They all lied and they betrayed their brother, their father, the brothers. They lied to their father. And the Quran uses the same word, kaid, for them as well. In some tafsirs, some commentators said because this 52 comes right after 51 and there is no sign to tell us who is talking, they assume that it was the wife of the Aziz that is speaking in 52. But the majority of mufassirun, of commentators, didn't agree, and for a good reason, because if we are saying that the wife of the Aziz is saying, this is so that he might know that I did not betray him in his absence, this is not true. She did betray him in his absence. And that God does not guide the plotting of the betrayers. We know from Yusuf alayhi salam that her people do not believe in God and the hereafter. So suddenly her talking about God in such a conscious way, especially if we accept 52 from her, then 53 also would be from her, which is even more unbelievable, which is وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. It would mean that she had gone through lots of, she became a muhsin herself, however, which is possible. However, there is no sign, no clue about it here in the text. So we can't, the majority of commentators, and I think, and I think that makes more sense, say that it is Yusuf alayhi salam speaking here, and that makes sense. And we will see how it makes sense that it is Yusuf alayhi salam speaking. Because we don't even know if she has repented or not. She just confessed when she had to. In some tafsirs also, they discussed Yusuf, where Yusuf alayhi salam was when he said this, when he said, this is so that he may know that I did not betray him. And the whole discussion, you will have all this long discussion, is he in the presence of the king or is he still in the prison? And they started analyzing the language. Is this a language that you would use in front of the king or not? What was the protocol then? No, he wouldn't have said this. He must have been in prison. No. But now we understand that first, since the Quran here, God doesn't tell me anything about it, what does it mean? You know, there is hikmah, there is purpose in what the Quran tells us and what it does not tell us. If it omits something, there is a hikmah in it as well. It is exactly for this reason. It does not want us to start talking about where he was. And so are we going to learn something from it? At the end, you find, okay, some said he was there. The other says, no, he was not there. Are we learning anything from it? It doesn't seem so, at least not in the tafsirs that I read. So God does not give us the details because in this story, he's not teaching us how to speak to the king, but how to live as conscious ibadullah, how to live like Yusuf alayhi salam as muhsins, and to be open to being taught hikmah so we can interpret events. So for ta'wil al-hadith. So it's very easy to go into information, details, and forget about the aim of the surah, the aim of the each ayah, especially when there is nothing that's suggested in the text itself. So Yusuf alayhi salam says that, and then he continues and says, and I do not seek to absolve myself, for surely the self, the nafs, does incite to evil, except to whom my Rabb shows mercy. Verily, my Rabb is much forgiving, most merciful. Subhanallah, he is in this situation. He is found innocent. He's gained the favor of the king. And what he's saying, I do not say that like I'm the best something. Illa ma rahima rabbi. If there is anything, if I am innocent, it's from my Rabb, not from me. Subhanallah. He's not defending himself. It's not, if it were me, it would be about me versus the others, like a struggle, a fight. He's not. Even when he's clearing his name, when he's seeking justice, he's not fighting. It's an opportunity again for him to remember his Rabb and to remind us of his Rabb's rahmah and guidance and protection. Subhanallah, he's such a conscious mirror to his Rabb's beautiful names. You can see the light coming from his words. He's there and he doesn't say, okay, it'll be like, even if I don't say anything, it'll be, like me, I was innocent. It's not about it's not about me. It's about my Rabb. My Rabb is the one who protected me and guided me. Otherwise, I would be like them. He doesn't see himself better than anyone. Such a beautiful attitude. This attitude is dhikr. It is remembrance. It is ubudiyah. This is what living as a muhsin is. And it reminded me of that ayah that says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Those who restrain their anger and pardon people, forgive people, and God loves the muhsinin. And the next
I think before we move on, I really want to highlight this point. I think it's a very beautiful moment in the story, and as you have just said, it shows once again that when we follow the signs of our Rabb, the signs point to Him, and those signs are dignifying to us. At the same time, they aren't about us. So it's so beautiful that He is asking for this clarification, which is very dignifying to Him. But He isn't doing it for Himself. He's doing it so that another beautiful thing becomes manifested about His Creator. If this wasn't cleared, then people might have this impression that, look at this man. He was chasing one day. He was chasing a married woman. Another day he's high up. This is life. Life is like this. So it would give a wrong impression to people, and whereas this is a moment where God's justice and guidance can manifest. So he's really, it's so beautiful. I'm just very taken back by this attitude of Yusuf alayhi salam, that it isn't about him, and it's very clear in verse 53. It's not about me. I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to absolve myself. And he's very honest, and I mean, this is incredible integrity. You know, he confesses my nafs does incite to evil. So it isn't like I'm pure. I'm this pure person. I never am tempted. Never, you know. I don't. I'm this high being. No, no, no. I just so it to be clear. I'm not absolving my ego. It's not about me. I think it's a very, very powerful moment in the story, mashallah.
And he's saying everyone's ego is the same. We all have the same tendencies, except إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي, except to whom my Rabb shows mercy. And to whom does he show mercy? Whoever is open to receive the mercy. So Yusuf knows that what may look to others, what may look to us as his achievements, he is this knowledgeable, wise man who can interpret dreams and visions, and they are all in fact blessings. He's saying everything, even my innocence, everything is from my Rabb, by the grace of the All-Merciful. Only the ghafil imagines that it's from himself, and when something like this happens, an injustice, then we get all worked up. It's all about me. That's why it becomes unbearable if I can't clear myself. So if we go back to Ayah 52, when he said, this is so that he might know that I did not betray him in his absence. Remember, we said some mufassirs like Ibn Kathir, and they said this was said by the wife, but the majority said no. And you will see that now it makes sense that it is Yusuf saying this. Anyways, she couldn't have said I did not betray him, his first master. She betrayed her husband. She wanted to, if she could. And that God does not guide the plotting of the betrayers. So here, can you imagine they are all, the king is hearing this from, whether directly or not is not the point. The king is hearing this from this man, from Yusuf alayhi salam. I mean, he must have been even more impressed by Yusuf alayhi salam's stand and how he handled the case. Firmly, calmly, respectfully. I mean, he never directly accused anyone. He didn't accuse the woman directly, the woman who put him in jail for so many years. And the reason he gives is not personal. He is making sure that his master, he says in 52 before 53, he says that it is to make sure that his master knows clearly that Yusuf did not betray him. What does it mean? That Yusuf alayhi salam is therefore trustworthy. Can you see the hikmah? There is hikmah within hikmah. There is light upon light. There is all these purposes do not have to contradict each other. He's clearing himself, clearing his name, upholding his Rabb's purpose, all at the same time, because they are all haqq, because they are all truth, so they support each other, they do not contradict each other. The fact that he is trustworthy, can you see the hikmah? He is being trustworthy is very relevant for his future, for this position that the king is offering him now. It is there's lots of wisdom. The way he handles the case and the way he explains why he did it. So that my master, so that he knows that it did not betray him. Subhanallah. Now we understand even more why he didn't go out of prison. You remember? Until he established his trustworthiness, not only clearing, now all that was part of establishing his trustworthiness. To me, I mean, I would just think of going out, but you see how far-sighted he is? All is happening by divine timing, so there's no impatience. Let's go out before anything changes, because I don't trust. You never know. He's not going out because of some coincidence. He knows that. He's wholly surrendered to the plan that his Rabb has for him. He's not blind. When he goes out, he's not blinded by anger or by fear. It means when he was in, he was not thinking about it. Because if you keep repeating something, when you go out, there is no way you can control yourself. And he's not stuck in an ego-centered world, because in 53, what he said, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. Everyone's ego, everyone's nafs is inclined to doing bad things. And I am no different. Because of that awareness, then he seeks help from God. That's why in Surah Al-Fatiha, we are continuously asking for guidance, asking for help, because we know it. I mean, when we are not living like him, we are in a world where it's all about me, you know? Me, like a small, 3-year-old. And he doesn't say, you see, I am innocent, and she did this and that and that and that to me. He's not gossiping. He's not complaining to anyone. Why he's not complaining? Because he is not a victim of anything. He knows that whatever is happening by divine decree. Wallahu ghalibun ala amrih. He is sure about that. He's not concerned about who did what to him. It's their issue, not his. So he's not gossiping, he's not complaining. And that's why there is so much self-respect, so much dignity, so much confidence, so calm, sakina. There is a sakina that comes from that grounding of iman. And you can see it in his demeanor, the choice of his words, in his the way he speaks. So it's not hard for the king to see that he is an exceptional person. I mean, from what we've been reading, it's just like so exceptional that you will want to read again and again. There are so many things in these ayats. So I'm only pointing to some. I mean, you can write books on psychology, on lots of things based on this. So Yusuf alayhi salam is here. He shows exceptional honesty, trustworthiness, righteousness, generosity of character. He does not accuse anyone, wisdom. And all this we know is given to him by the grace of God, because he is a muhsin. So muhsin is in that. These are the signs, the outward how a muhsin looks. But the muhsin, what looks to our choice, to our free will, is that keeping that awareness, that conscious alive, making always that choice. When we always have two choices, always choosing according to that consciousness that all is well. And remember that the king and the people at the court are aware, we know from his speech before, they are aware of his past and his problems and tribulations. He's going into prison, the conditions of his going into prison. And on top of all these qualities, Yusuf alayhi salam was the only one who knew how to store the crops. Remember when he was interpreting the vision for the king, he also got extra inspiration or revelation about how to store the crops, the grains. So the king says, and the king said, bring him to me, I will select him exclusively for my own service. Now it makes sense. This king has practical wisdom. So when he, which means Yusuf alayhi salam, spoke to him, the king said, when I say the king, it's not in the original. The original, as I said before, is you have to stop and think, who is he? فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ. The pronouns are on purpose left like that, so you have to stop and you can't just read and pretend you understood. You understand. He said, the king said, you are now one of established position, fully trusted by us. For good reason. He is a trustworthy person. Interestingly, it's when he says you are one of established position, you will see later that Allah says we are the one who established you in this position. So it's not only Yusuf's knowledge. At the beginning, it looked like it was Yusuf's knowledge of interpretation and of storing the grain that impressed the king, but it must be also his wisdom, his beautiful character, his beautiful akhlaq, the way he handled the whole situation in a very smooth, very beautiful way. And all this is very closely related to his iman, to his yaqeen, to his certainty, to his tawakkul, trust on God, to his Islam, to his surrender. And it reminded me, I'm sure you know that hadith that says, حسن الخلق من كمال الإيمان. I think it was حسن الخلق. So beautiful character is from كمال الإيمان, from the completion. When Iman gets full and mature, it shows up outwardly as beautiful character. And he also, the Prophet ﷺ also says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثُّ لِأُتْمِمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to complete مكارم الأخلاق. How would you say that? Let's say, beautiful characters, beautiful morals. And I'm sure there are lots of hadiths on beautiful character. It's very, very very important because it's directly related to how you perceive yourself, the world, your Rabb, and therefore the world, and vice versa. They're all interconnected. So the king expresses his approval. He appoints Yusuf alayhi salam, yes, and then Yusuf alayhi salam presents his request to the king, and he says, Yusuf replies, please place me or put me in charge of the treasures of the land. Behold, I shall be a good and knowing keeper. So he does not only say, oh yes, thank you, but he says, give me a position like, put me in charge of all the treasures of the land. When I read this the first time, I was like, Subhanallah, look at this attitude. I mean, look at the dignity, look at the confidence. I mean, you'd completely forget that this man just came out of prison. Our idea, according to the way we give in our environment, our physical conditions and everything, we give them so much power over us to justify whatever we do. So according to our understanding, this is a meek, compliant, submissive slave prisoner. But he is not. He's none of that. And where does this confidence come from? I mean, it's not like he was an adult when he was put there. No, no, no. He was sold into slavery as a child. This is amazing. I mean, we would rationalize, justify everything we do. It's because of this, because I was sold as a slave. And I will say it again and again and again, like a tape recorder. And I start believing it, and I start making the wrong choices and saying it's because of that. Like, I have to do it. This is showing us that this is not the case at all. It's not true. There is an ayah in the Quran says, human being shall against himself be an eyewitness, even though he may veil himself in excuses. Yeah, well, sorry. So it says, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. Everyone knows when we are making excuses, it's inviting us to go back and stop and really be conscious, aware. Deep down we know, but we are so caught up in doing the same thing again and again without thinking that we start believing in our justification stories. What the Quran calls here ma'adira, excuses. He says you make up stories, excuses for whatever you do. No one says I'm doing it because I'm making the wrong choice, because I'm lazy, because of this and that. I mean, this is a man who was sold as a slave into slavery as a child, who spent most of his youth in prison. And this is the first day he goes out of prison. Look at the stand and the attitude and how he speaks to the king. I mean, yes, we can say, but his master was good to him. Yes, but he was not his loving father. He was still a slave. I mean, the wife of the master could throw him in prison easily. It means Yusuf did not dwell on appearances, on how things looked from outside. He did not make them an excuse to whine and complain. And this needs that consciousness, that being conscious, being aware of what I'm doing. Because it's very easy, as he says, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ, we revel in complaining and whining. There is part of us that wants to whine and complain. But when you stop and look at it, why are you complaining? About whom? For what? Then you stop. Then you make choices. You choose to be grateful rather than complain. So the muhsins, like Yusuf alayhi salam, they know that whether it is through a loving father, whether you have parents or not, family or friends or not, it is always our Rabb who takes care of us in all situations, all the time. So just because I don't have parents, I don't have a loving father, my father is not loving, is doing something else, that is, I can make it an excuse to complain, but I can also find something else to be grateful for and see the hikmah, what is taught to me through that. And so when we see our life in this way, then we don't have to worry, we don't feel that helplessness, and that because we trust him, and we can let go of all fears and anger and frustrations. And what we call trauma, because here, according to us, this child had a very traumatic life. But trauma is the result of bad memories, and bad memories that we never forgot. Why? Because we didn't process them. Actually, we make them bigger than they were, because if something happened 10 times, we repeat it in our mind and imagination hundreds and thousands and times all our life until it becomes a big part of our life. For instance, if I am the object of an injustice and I can't do anything, especially as a child, you feel powerless. And when you are powerless and there is that injustice, you feel helpless. And if there is no one, no Rab, no source of support that you can go back to, then there will be lots of fear. And from fear comes anger. You feel very angry. And I'm angry and helpless. I can't do anything. It's the worst thing you can imagine. It becomes like an emotional knot. It can be like an emotional bubble more than a knot. And I become immersed in that emotion rather than the emotion being in me. But when I'm connected to my Rabb, then I can see the inner aspect of events. I look to my Rabb's design. I realize my limits. Yes, I am limited. I have no power, but I trust that someone is taking care of me, because that helplessness is what makes us really very fearful and therefore very angry and frustrated. And to the extent I know my Rabb with his beautiful attributes, with his compassion and love and knowledge and wisdom and power and everything, to that extent I can trust and relax. I know that he is taking care of everything. When others plot against you, then you remember, إِنَّهُمْ يَكِيدُونَ كَيْدًا وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا. It says in the Quran. They are plotting and I am surely plotting. And we can see that here. They were plotting, but Allah also had his own design. So Yusuf didn't have to plot against them or even be busy with them. None of his, it's their own delusions and illusions. Because he knows, he's aware that Allahu ghalibun ala amrih. Allah is always, how did we translate ghalibun ala amrih? He has the last word, let's say. That nothing happens of its own haphazardly, without aim, without purpose. And so he can easily trust and surrender. And so he can benefit from the fruits of his surrender, which, for instance, the wisdom he learned, the meaning of the ta'wil al-hadith, the interpretation of events, of visions, of dreams. At least he spared the anguish and the anxiety, the helpless fear and anger. And his life is full of light, even when he was in a dark cell in prison. And we say, but nothing good is happening in my life. Well, look, it says in the Quran, look at the succession of day and night. Look at the food and the water that is provided for you. The breath you're taking, each breath in and out is a ni'mah, is a blessing. So there isn't no need to go far to find things to be grateful about. And when we start being grateful about those things and start seeing the messages that those things are bringing us, then we start seeing them as signs, as mirror reflecting the divine names, then our life starts changing. Our being, our perception of ourselves, of our world, of the meaning of life changes. And so he was in prison, sitting, learning. For him it was, he was always with his Rabb. And then one day they called him out and he left there to be made a ruler. And so in 56, right in 55, when the king says, we give him, no, in 54, the king says, we give him, we're giving you this position, established you and you are well trusted. And then Yusuf alayhi salam not only accepts that, but he says, give me, put me in charge of all the treasures of the land. And then now in 56, he says, and thus we establish, here we is God speaking. We establish Yusuf securely. Isn't that amazing that God is speaking to us directly? He's saying, we establish Yusuf securely in the land, so he had full mastery over it, doing whatever he willed. We bestow favor out of our mercy on whomsoever we will, and we do not fail to reward the muhsinin. That's really amazing. In that was 56. Okay. In Surah, in Ayah 55, when Yusuf alayhi salam just remembered. Sorry, remember the point about that Ayah when he says, "Place me in charge of the treasures of all the treasures of the land." Commentators discuss the wisdom in Yusuf, not all of them, but many of them, in Yusuf's proposal to the king. Just in case you read some tafsir, I'm not going to really talk about it, maybe because I'm not really interested in this. The concern here is that this was a system based on injustice, the kingdom where he lived. And so, and Yusuf is not only accepting the position, he's offering his services to the king. So you can imagine what the discussion is about. Like, how come? Is it okay to serve such king or not? And why I am saying that I'm not interested? Because I feel that in our reading, in the way we listened to the story so far, we can see the divine will behind, for instance, right now, Yusuf's appointment, apparent appointment by the king. The king is appointing him, but in 56, it's saying we appointed him. God himself is saying we appointed him. And we saw this happening before as well in this surah, that something happens. For instance, it says, and for some reason, they put him in prison. It doesn't say who put him and what the reason was. What did they make up as a reason to send him? Because it's not important. Right after he says, and this is how we answered his prayer, and this is how he was protected. So apparently from the outside, in this dunya, in this life, it looks like some people for some reason send him, and it doesn't even tell us why, because we would be then discussing those reasons. And Allah doesn't want us to dwell on that, because He wants us to notice that this is actually God's will for him. And so it is here now. His appointment is also God's will. And if you have any doubt, remember that he is appointed because first, the king had a vision. Second, he had been given the knowledge to interpret this vision. Not only interpret it, but even how to store the grain. The vision is not some vision that suddenly came to the king unrelated to the world. No, it is a vision about the future event that are going to happen in the physical world. There is going to be plenty, 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine, so of drought. So the whole universe is coming together in a way so that this is going to happen, and Yusuf alayhi salam is going to get this position. So the king could not have appointed him on his own. So it's not the king who is helping Yusuf or doing anything for him. The king himself didn't even know the meaning of his own vision. He doesn't know. He's received the vision and he's only part of, he's one small part of this big design. Just like Yusuf, except Yusuf has a more conscious, more aware part in the design. So that's why, to me, it didn't occur to me, wouldn't have occurred to me to ask, oh, is it okay? Is it halal? Is it haram? Is it mubah to work for the king or not? Because we are not reading this story at that level. And so, because of course in Ayah 55, directly Allah is saying, we appointed him, so they had to explain it. And so in his tafsir al-Kashaf, Zamakhshari says, when Yusuf alayhi salam proposed, please place all the resources of the country under my trust, he meant to get an opportunity for enforcing the commandments of God and for establishing truth and justice, and to gain that power which is essential for fulfilling the mission for which the messengers are sent. He did not make this demand for the love of kingdom or for worldly desires and ambitions. He did this because he knew well that there was no one else who could perform that work. So, you see, suddenly they had to stop and think, yeah, how is he working for the king? Whereas the story actually from the beginning is telling us the wisdom in all this. And we also know that when he's taking he's offering his services, in this position, he is going to serve lots of innocent people. I mean, by serving the king, he's also going to serve the people around, because this is going to be about people dying of hunger otherwise, if he was not in that position. They also discussed about what kind of position did he have. And I don't know if it's very relevant, but in Ayah 100, we know that he was sitting on a throne, because he says, وَرَفَعَ أَبَوْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. We will talk about it when we get there. But some discuss, was he a governor? Was he the king? Was he... And it seems like it's not important, because whatever he is doing it in the name of God. What is very interesting is right after it says in 56, we establish Yusuf securely in the land. And then in 57 it says, and surely the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and are conscious of God. Like, just in case we thought that being a ruler or living in a palace was the supreme attainment, al-fawz al-azim. Immediately after, it says we established him on the land, and then it says the reward of the hereafter is much better. So we give him a reward here in this world. But what is it next to the hereafter? For those who know, it says, of course. لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. And because those who know, they also know that the world is fleeting, flowing. And so, why is the reward of the hereafter better than the reward of this world? Because it is lasting. Because the reward of this world, however good it is passing. And it is only a sign to the ultimate reward, the everlasting reward in the hereafter. And that's why we will see later at the end, when his dream is fulfilled, Yusuf alayhi salam, because he's very well aware of this reality, he utters the famous ayah 101 when he says, "Tawaffani musliman walhiqni bis-salihin." So he says, "Oh my Rabb, you have bestowed me on me power. You gave me power. You taught me ta'wil al-ahadith, and you are my wali in this dunya and in akhirah. Anta wali fi dunya wal akhirah. Tawaffani musliman walhiqni bis-salihin." Let me die in a state of surrender, and join me with the salihin, with the righteous. It's just a beautiful dua. And so, to me, it is clear where our focus needs to be. Akhirah. Even this dunya is for akhirah. And it reminded me of, if you remember, there is an ayah that says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ. Those who deny the truth, their deeds are like a mirage in the desert. And interestingly, I knew the ayah, but I had not realized that it was in Surah Nur. Don't know, those who know the ayah, were you aware that it is in Surah Nur? So, if we have time, I will read without any comment. Just want to put it in context. Because that famous ayat Nur, God is the light of the heavens and earth. I knew that separately from this, but I found that they are very close to each other. Their deeds are like a mirage in أعمالهم كسراب is ayah 39, and Nurun ala Nur is 35. Isn't that interesting? I'll just read it and finish there, inshallah. I won't comment.
Could you please repeat the chapter and the verse number?
Which chapter and which verse number?
Surah Nur.
Surah Nur is chapter 24. And there is an ayah there that I remembered when I saw this, when it says the akhirah is even better for those who know, was that the deeds of those who deny the truth are like a mirage. And it carries on. And then I realized that this ayah, 24:39, ayah 39, chapter 24, is in Surah Al-Nur, and it's in a place very close to ayah Al-Nur, which is ayah 35 of the same surah, Surah 24. I thought it was interesting because I had never realized before. Maybe I read it, but I did not pay attention to it before. So it says, I start from 34 to 39. I'm going to read without comment. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And verily, we have sent down for you ayat that clearly expound the truth and many examples of those who passed away before you, and an admonition to the God conscious. God is the light of the heaven and the earth. The parable of his light is, as it were, a niche containing a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass shines like a radiant star lit from a blessed tree, an olive tree that is neither of the east nor of the west. The oil glows of itself, even though no fire touches it. Light upon light. God guides unto his light him that wills to be guided. And God gives parables to make people understand, since God alone has full knowledge of all things. In the houses which God has allowed to be raised, this light is in the houses which God has allowed to be raised so that his name be remembered in them, and in their people glorify him in the morning and in the evening, meaning day in, day out, all the time. People whom neither commerce, business, nor striving after profit diverts them from remembering God, and from establishing constant prayer, and from giving in charity. People who are filled with fear at the thought of the day on which all hearts and eyes will be petrified. People who only hope that God may reward them in accordance with the best that they ever did, and give them more out of his grace. For God grants sustenance unto whom he wills, beyond all measure. But as for those who deny the truth, their deeds are like a mirage in the desert, which the thirsty imagines to be water, until when he approaches it, he finds that it was nothing. Instead, he finds that God has always been present with him, and that God pays him his account in full. For God is swift in reckoning, in settling the account. Or their deeds are like the depths of darkness upon an abysmal sea, covered by a billow, above which is a billow, above which is a cloud, creating darkness piled upon another, darkness upon darkness. When one holds his hand up, he would hardly see it, for he to whom God gives no light, he will have no light. Alhamdulillah الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله.
Thank you very much, Sister Yamina, for this beautiful interpretation, inshallah. May Allah help us all to be guided with all these messages and be transformed with them, inshallah. Is there anyone who would like to ask questions or make a comment? Please do so.
I want to make a comment. السلام عليكم. جزاكم الله خير. جزاك الله خير يمينة. الله يسعدك. One of the interesting contrasts in the ayah that you read is light upon light and darkness upon darkness. Like you can now see that, like when we get so absorbed in what we think is the whole picture, then it becomes darkness upon darkness. And when we get out, it's light upon light. And then it reminded me of like Sayyidina Yusuf, when the prisoners asked him about the meaning of their dream, he wanted to direct their attention to take it away from their concern, because they were asking him because they were concerned about their future, and they knew their dreams had to do with their future, their immediate future. Are they going to get out of prison? What's going to happen to them? And before he answered, that, he did not answer because he wanted them to take their focus to akhirah. He wanted to make them get away from this, from this central kind of egocentric and darkness upon darkness, thinking about things that are very short-sighted, and go to the most meaningful thing, which is akhirah, because once, with just a change of heart, their akhirah could be changed. like if their heart status changes, their whole akhirah can be changed. So that was my first thought. And the second thought came like from Prophet Ibrahim's family, that Allah in the Quran mentions that this family was given the khasiyat, like this very special gift of dhikr ad-dar, that they were always in remembrance of akhirah. Like, so that's why how Hajar would say, oh, did your God tell you to leave me here? Okay, because they had it very clear. And his son would say, is that what is that, as long as what your God is that what he says? Okay, so everyone, like their awareness of akhirah made it very easy for them to deal with things that look like unbelievable. Jazakallah khair.
Yes, thank you, Alia. It's both ways. The more we see how transient this world is, the more we remember akhirah, and the more we are grounded in akhirah, the more the transience of this world, we don't forget it. We will see it. It will attract our attention because it's there. It's there. This morning is not here. It's gone. It is always flowing, but for some reason, we forget it. So yes, alhamdulillah. It's both ways. And if we focus, the more we focus on akhirah, the more this life will be, we were saying the other day, the irony is we want this world, but we can't have the world. What is good about this world, we will have it only when we focus on the akhirah. Otherwise, we will get nothing. That's what it's saying. Sarab. Sarab was, what was the English for sarab?
Was it mirage? Mirage?
Mirage. Thank you. Yeah. So the world in itself is like a mirage. Whatever is beautiful about it, the meaning that are beautiful, they are all sending us to akhirah, pointing to akhirah. So only when we focus on akhirah, it means we are focused on the beautiful aspect of this world as well. So you either get both or none. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I have one more comment. I'm sorry. And the comment is last week, as we were going through like the difference in timing, like the timing. As I was thinking, the timing, I could see how the timing is a huge factor in God's taqdeer. So that if we think that, like, if we take the scenario where one of the prisoners has went out and mentioned that there's this person who's in prison and has been treated unfairly, and yet but he's a good guy, and I have witnessed him as a good guy. This will be just like a simple person speaking on behalf of a person whose injustice has fallen upon. So you can, like, if you're out there listening, it does not give Yusuf any justice. But when time was right, then there's a different way of receiving Yusuf. It's his, instead of like, a simple person saying, oh, I know this person who is truthful and just what's happening. Then you find Yusuf being called upon. You find the king himself looking for an expert. That expert is not available. He keeps looking again, he's not available. He keeps looking again, asking people and saying, I need this expert. And then as his need for this expert increases and increases, then then this simple person, then even when he brings in, Yusuf, he's like his, he excuses himself, goes to get Yusuf, comes back, tells the answer, but it's a total different reception of Sayyidina Yusuf. Jazakallah khair.
So we can understand that it was meant to be, and it's not the plan of the king or of anyone.
Yeah. So even the word shaitan has made him forget. Even when the shaitan has made him forget, that was part of the plan.
Yes, yes. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. Wallahu ghalibun ala amrih in any case.
Thank you again, Dr. Yamina, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Inshallah, we hope to see you all next week. Inshallah. Till then, fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakum
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah.